The warning sirens screamed across New Sol Colony like angry metal birds. Red lights flashed in every building, every street, every corner of the settlement that 3,000 humans had called home for the past 8 years. Lee Dae-ho ran through the central command center, sweat dripping from his forehead. As colony administrator, he had practiced this moment 100 times in simulations. But now that it was real, his hands shook as he grabbed the emergency communication device. All citizens of New Sol Colony, his voice echoed through every speaker system. This is not a drill. The solar flares are coming faster than predicted. We have 6 hours to evacuate. Report to your assigned loading zones immediately. The planet Kepler 442b had seemed like paradise when they first arrived. Blue skies, breathable air, and vast oceans that reminded them of Earth. But the star this planet orbited was dying. The scientists had said they had months before the deadly solar flares would begin. They were wrong. Park Tae-min grabbed his wife Kim So-ra by the hand. She was holding their 3-month-old baby, Park Woo-jin, close to her chest. The baby was crying, frightened by the loud sirens and flashing lights. "We need to get to loading zone C," Tae-min shouted over the noise. "The transport leaves in 4 hours," So-ra nodded, bouncing little Woo-jin gently. "And medical supplies," she said. "I need to get the baby formula and his medicine from the clinic first." "There's no time," Tae-min said, but he saw the worry in his wife's eyes. Woo-jin had been born premature. He needed special medicine to keep his lungs strong. "Okay, but we make it quick." They ran through the streets of New Sol Colony. Other families were doing the same thing, carrying bags and children, calling out to neighbors and friends. The Kim family from next door waved as they loaded their hovercar with belongings. "See you on the transport ship," Mrs. Kim called out. "Save us seats," So-ra called back. Trying to smile, despite her fear, the medical clinic was in chaos when they arrived. Dr. Yoon Hae, one was stuffing medical equipment into metal containers while her assistants grabbed medicine bottles from the shelves. "So-ra," Dr. Yoon said when she saw them. "Perfect timing. I was packing Woo-jin's medicine. How much do we have?" So-ra asked. "Enough for 2 months if we're careful," the doctor replied. She handed So-ra a small bag filled with bottles and medical equipment. "Keep it cool and dry." Woo-jin had stopped crying and was looking around with his big dark eyes. He seemed fascinated by all the activity, not understanding that his world was about to end. Suddenly, the building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling and the lights flickered. "What was that?" Tae-min asked. Through the window, they could see a bright flash in the sky. The first solar flare had arrived early. "We need to leave now," Dr. Yoon said. "The radiation shields won't hold much longer." They ran toward the exit, but another shake stopped them. This one was stronger. The ceiling in the main hallway cracked and pieces of concrete began to fall. "This way," Tae-min yelled, pulling So-ra toward the emergency exit at the back of the building, but as they ran, a loud cracking sound filled the air. A huge piece of the ceiling broke away and crashed down, blocking their path. Dust filled the air, making it hard to see or breathe. "So-ra," Tae-min called out. The falling debris had separated them. He was on one side of the collapsed section, she was on the other. "I'm okay." So-ra's voice came from the other side. "But Woo-jin ... he's not with me." In the confusion and dust, baby Woo-jin had fallen from his mother's arms. He lay on a soft medical bed where he had bounced safely, but now he was alone on Tae-min's side of the collapse. "I can see him," Tae-min shouted. "He's safe. I'll get him and find another way to you." But when Tae-min picked up his son, he realized the problem. The emergency exit on his side led to a different part of the colony. The building was collapsing, and there was no safe way to reach So-ra, the loading zone. So-ra called through the debris. "Meet me at loading zone C. I'll wait for you there." "I'll find a way," Tae-min promised. "We'll be right behind you." Holding Woo-jin tight, Tae-min ran through the back exit. The baby was crying again, scared by the loud noises and shaking ground. Outside, the sky was getting brighter as more solar flares approached. Taemin tried every path he knew, but each street leading to loading zone C was blocked by collapsed buildings or dangerous electrical fires. The colony's infrastructure was failing faster than anyone had expected. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Taemin found himself at loading zone B, where other desperate colonists were boarding the last transport ship from that section. Please, Taemin begged the transport captain, Choi Bong-soo. My wife is at zone C. I need to get there. Captain. Choi looked at the crying baby, then at the increasingly dangerous sky. I'm sorry, but the roads are impassable. Zone C is on the other side of the reactor district, and it's not stable. If we wait any longer, none of us will make it. I can't leave without her, Taemin said. Sir, one of the other passengers called. Out, it was teacher Nam Yujin from the colony school. The transports from Zone C already launched. I saw them on the scanner. Your wife made it out safely. Taemin felt relief flood through him. Sora was safe. He could meet her at the rendezvous point in space. As the transport ship lifted off from Kepler 442b, Taemin held Woojin and looked down at their former home. The colony was already glowing from the radiation of the solar flares. Soon it would be completely uninhabitable, but they had all made it out. Soon they would be reunited with Sora on one of the main evacuation ships. What Taemin didn't know was that in the confusion at Zone C, Sora had boarded a transport believing that he and Woojin were already safely on board another ship. The passenger lists were incomplete due to the emergency, and in the chaos of evacuation, no one realized that baby Woojin was not with his mother. As the last transport ship disappeared into space, the abandoned medical clinic stood silent. Inside, the emergency power systems continued to run, keeping the building's radiation shields active. And in one small room, 3-month-old Park Woojin slept peacefully on a medical bed, unaware that he was now completely alone on a dying world. The solar flares grew stronger, painting the sky in brilliant colors that no human eyes would see. The empty colony of New Seoul stood as a monument to human hope and human failure, with one small life left behind to face whatever came next. 3 days had passed since the last human ship disappeared into the black sky above. Kepler 442b, the solar flares had turned the atmosphere into a dancing curtain of green and gold light, beautiful but deadly to most forms of life. Deep beneath the mountains that surrounded the abandoned New Seoul colony, something stirred in the crystal caves. Thalvex opened his massive golden eyes and stretched his long neck. The ancient being was nearly 30 meters from nose to tail, with scales that shimmered like polished metal. His kind, the Velthari, had been watching this planet long before the humans arrived. Thalvex was old, even by the standards of his people. He had lived for over 800 years, spending most of that time alone in his underground home, studying the unique energy crystals that grew in the planet's core. The Velthari were naturally solitary creatures. They came together only to mate or to share important discoveries about the universe. The great dragon-like being had been curious about the small pale creatures that had built their settlement above his caves. He had watched them through hidden sensors, learning their language and studying their behavior. Humans were interesting to him. They were weak and short-lived, but they built things and worked together in ways that amazed him. When the evacuation began, Thalvex had observed everything from his hidden chambers. He saw the panic, the rushing around, the ships taking off into space. He felt something strange, watching them leave. It was almost like sadness, though he could not understand. Why now, 3 days later, his sensors told him that the radiation levels above ground were dropping. The solar flares had passed, leaving the planet wounded but not dead. It would take time, but life would slowly return to the surface. Thalvex decided to explore the abandoned human settlement. He had never seen their buildings up close, and his scientific mind was curious about their construction methods. He emerged from his cave system through a hidden entrance in the mountains. The journey to the colony took him several hours as he moved carefully through the changed landscape. The solar flares had burned away much of the plant life, leaving the ground covered in a thin layer of crystalline dust. The human buildings stood empty and silent. Thalvex explored them one by one, his massive form moving surprisingly quietly through the streets. He was fascinated by the small scale of everything. Humans were such tiny creatures, yet they had built structures that showed remarkable intelligence. The medical clinic caught his attention because his sensors detected a faint energy signature coming from inside. The building's emergency power was still running, maintaining basic life support systems. This puzzled him. Why would the humans leave power running in an abandoned building? Thalvex had to change his body density to fit through the human-sized entrance. It was a skill all Velthari possessed, allowing them to compress their forms when needed. Inside, he found the collapsed section of the building where debris blocked the main hallway, but the energy signature was coming from deeper inside. Following his sensors, Thalvex made his way through the maze of rooms and corridors. The building was designed well, he noted. The humans had built strong radiation shields and backup power systems. That was when he heard it, a soft crying sound. Weak but persistent, Thalvex froze. His enhanced hearing could detect sounds across a wide range of frequencies. This was definitely a living creature, and it sounded distressed. Following the sound, he found a small room where medical equipment was stored. On a soft bed in the corner, a tiny human infant lay crying. The baby was thin and obviously hungry, but alive. Thalvex stared at the small creature in amazement. A human child left behind during the evacuation. How had this happened? He quickly scanned his memory of the evacuation he had observed. There had been so much chaos, so much confusion. It would have been easy for someone so small to be overlooked. The baby's cries were getting weaker. Thalvex's scientific instruments told him the infant was suffering from dehydration and hunger. Without help, it would die within hours. The logical thing to do would be to preserve the specimen. Thalvex had collected samples of many species over his long lifetime. A human infant would be a valuable addition to his research collection. He could study how their species developed, learn about their biology and growth patterns, but as he looked down at the tiny creature, something unexpected happened. The baby opened its eyes and looked directly at him. There was no fear in those dark eyes, only curiosity. The crying stopped and the infant made soft cooing sounds. As if it was trying to communicate, Thalvex had never experienced anything like the emotion that filled him in that moment. The closest word he could find in human language was protective. This small, helpless creature needed care, and for the first time in his very long life, Thalvex felt the urge to provide that care. He gently lifted the baby with his smallest manipulator appendage, careful not to harm the fragile being. The infant was so light, so delicate. How did humans survive at all when they started life in such a vulnerable state? "What am I going to call you, small one?" Thalvex asked in his deep, rumbling voice. He had learned enough human language to speak it, though he had never had reason to do so before. Looking around the medical room, he found a small identification tag that had fallen from one of the evacuation bags. It read Park Woo-jin in both human script and digital code. "Woo-jin?" Thalvex repeated slowly. "Your name is Woo-jin." The baby made happy sounds when he heard the name, as if he recognized it. Vex knew that what he was considering went against every custom of his people. The Velthari did not adopt other species. They did not raise children that were not their own. They especially did not involve themselves in the lives of what they considered lesser creatures, but this tiny human had survived 3 days alone on a planet that should have killed him. There was something remarkable about that kind of resilience, something that spoke to Thalvex on a level deeper than logic or custom. "Very well, small Woo-jin," he said softly. "You are now under my protection. I will teach you the ways of the Velthari, and you will grow strong and wise." As he carried the infant back toward his underground home, Thalvex began planning the changes he would need to make. His cave system would require modifications to accommodate a human child. He would need to learn about human nutrition, human development, human needs. It would be the most challenging research project of his very long life. But as the baby settled comfortably in his gentle grip, Thalvex felt something he had never experienced before. He felt like a father 15 years had passed since Thalvex found the crying baby in the abandoned medical clinic. Now, Park Woo-jin was no longer a helpless infant. He had grown into a strong young man, though he was still tiny compared to his adoptive father. Woo-jin stood at the edge of the great crystal chamber that had been his home for as long as he could remember. The underground cave system stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with glowing crystals that provided light and energy. Thalvex had spent years modifying the caves to make them suitable for a human child. There were human-sized walkways carved into the walls, small rooms where Woo-jin could sleep and study, and even a workshop where he could build his inventions. Thalvex had learned to create furniture and tools that fit his adopted son's smaller hands. "Father," Woo-jin called out, using the Velthari word that meant honored parent. His voice echoed through the vast chamber. Thalvex emerged from one of the deeper tunnels, his golden scales catching the crystal light. Despite his massive size, he moved with careful grace, always mindful not to accidentally harm his fragile human son. "Yes, little one," Thalvex responded in the musical language of the Velthari. It had taken Woo-jin years to master the complex tones and harmonics, but now he spoke it as naturally as if he had been born to it. "The energy manipulation exercises," Woo-jin said, frustration clear in his voice. "I still cannot make the crystals respond the way you do." This was a source of constant disappointment for the young human. Every Velthari could channel energy through their bodies, making crystals glow brighter or dimmer, heating them or cooling them, even shaping them into new forms. But no matter how hard Woo-jin tried, he could barely make the smallest crystal flicker. Thalvex lowered his great head to look at his son with gentle golden eyes. "Perhaps," he said thoughtfully, "you are approaching this in the wrong way. Show me what you have been working on in your workshop." Woo-jin's face brightened. He led his father to the small chamber he had claimed as his own workspace. The room was filled with strange devices made from crystal fragments, metal salvaged from the abandoned human colony, and organic materials he had grown in the cave's hydroponic gardens. "I cannot manipulate energy like you," Woo-jin explained. "So I have been building tools that can do it for me." He picked up a device that looked like a crystal rod with metal wiring wrapped around it. When he pressed a button on the side, the crystals in the room began to pulse with different colored light. "Remarkable," Thalvex said, his voice full of pride. "You have created an external energy manipulation device. I have never seen anything like this. Is it acceptable?" Woo-jin asked anxiously. "Even though I cannot do it the proper Velthari way, my son," Thalvex said gently, "there is no shame in finding your own path. In fact, I believe this shows a kind of intelligence that is uniquely yours." Over the following months, Woo-jin's workshop became filled with increasingly complex inventions. When he could not fly like the Velthari, he built a device with wings, made from crystal fibers that could carry him through the air. When he struggled to lift heavy objects with his weak human muscles, he created mechanical arms powered by crystal energy. His greatest challenge came during his 15th year, when Thalvex announced that it was time for Woo-jin to meet other members of their species. "The young ones of my people are gathering for their traditional learning ceremony," Thalvex explained. "It is important that you participate. You must take your place among the Velthari." Woo-jin felt nervous as they traveled to the sacred meeting place deep in the planet's core. He had never seen another Velthari besides his father. What would they think of him? The ceremonial chamber was enormous, carved from a single massive crystal that glowed with rainbow colors. 12 young Velthari were present, each one over 20 meters long and covered in beautiful scales of different colors. Woo-jin felt like an ant among giants. The ceremony was led by Elder Vos Kalen, an ancient female whose scales had turned silver with age. She looked at Woo-jin with obvious disgust. "Thalvex," she said in a voice like distant thunder, "why have you brought this tiny creature to our sacred gathering?" "This is my son," Thalvex replied firmly. "He has earned the right to participate in the learning ceremony." The other young Velthari whispered among themselves, their voices creating a low humming sound. Wu Jin could hear words like strange, defective, and inappropriate. Very well, Elder Voskalen said coldly. Let us see if this small one can complete the traditional tests. The first test was energy projection. Each young Velthari was required to light a crystal formation that was suspended high above the chamber floor. One by one, the young dragons sent beams of energy upward, making the crystals blaze with brilliant light. When it was Wu Jin's turn, he stepped forward with confidence. He could not project energy from his body, but he had prepared for this moment. From his backpack, he pulled out a device he had built specifically for this purpose. It was a crystal-powered energy projector, small enough for his human hands but powerful enough to compete with natural Velthari abilities. He aimed carefully and activated the device. A beam of pure energy shot upward, striking the crystal formation and making it glow even brighter than the efforts of the natural-born Velthari. There was stunned silence in the chamber. The second test required the participants to fly to different locations around the chamber and retrieve small crystal fragments. Again, the young Velthari used their natural wings and energy manipulation abilities. Wu Jin activated his flying harness, which used controlled energy bursts to propel him through the air. He was faster and more agile than the larger Velthari, able to dart between obstacles and reach tight spaces they could not access. By the end of the ceremony, even Elder Voskalen was watching Wu Jin with grudging respect. This small one, she said to Thalvex, fights against his limitations instead of accepting them. This is either great wisdom or great foolishness. Among my people, Wu Jin said, speaking for himself for the first time during the ceremony, we call it being human. The other young Velthari began to see Wu Jin differently after that day. Some remained suspicious and hostile, but others became curious about his strange methods and innovative solutions. Wu Jin had proven that being different did not mean being inferior, but the ceremony had also planted a seed of doubt in his mind. For the first time he began to wonder about these mysterious people he had mentioned. Who were the humans? And why did their way of solving problems come so naturally to him? 2 years had passed since the learning ceremony, but Wu Jin could not stop thinking about what he had said that day. Among my people, we call it being human. The words had come from somewhere deep inside him, from a knowledge he did not remember. Learning, he stood in his workshop, surrounded by his latest inventions, but his mind was elsewhere. Every time he looked at his reflection in the polished crystal mirrors, he saw the differences that could no longer be ignored. His skin was soft and pale, not scaled and metallic like the Velthari. His eyes were small and round, not large and golden. His body was weak and required tools to accomplish what others did naturally. "Father," he called out one evening as Thalvex returned from one of his research expeditions. "Yes, my son. I need to ask you something important," Wu Jin said, his voice serious. "What am I really?" Thalvex stopped moving. For a long moment the great dragon said nothing. Then he lowered himself to the ground so that his head was level with Wu Jin's. "What do you mean?" Thalvex asked carefully. "I am not like you," Wu Jin said. "I am not like any of the other Velthari. My body is completely different. My mind works differently. Even the way I solve problems is different. I need to know the truth." Thalvex closed his golden eyes and was quiet for a very long time. When he opened them again, there was deep sadness in them. "Sit down, little one," he said gently. "There is a story I must tell you." Wu Jin sat on one of the crystal formations that served as furniture in their home. His heart was beating fast, and he felt both excited and frightened to finally learn the truth. 17 years ago, Thalvex began, there was a settlement on the surface of our world. It was built by creatures from another planet far across the galaxy. They called themselves humans. As his father spoke, memories began stirring in Wu Jin's mind. Vague images of different colors, different shapes, different sounds, things he had thought were dreams. "These humans lived on the surface for many years," Thalvex continued. "They were small creatures like you. They had the same soft skin, the same round eyes, the same clever minds that solved problems by building tools instead of using natural power." "I am human," Wu Jin whispered, It was not a question. Yes, Thalvex said sadly, you are human, but why am I here? Where are the others of my kind? Thalvex told him about the evacuation, about the solar flares, about finding a crying baby in the abandoned medical clinic. As he spoke, Wu Jin felt emotions he had never experienced before. Anger, confusion, and a deep sense of loss. So they left me, he said bitterly. My own people abandoned me to die. No, Thalvex said firmly. It was an accident. In the chaos of the evacuation, you were separated from your parents. They did not choose to leave you behind. How do you know? Wu Jin demanded. Maybe they did not want a weak child. Maybe they decided I was not worth saving. Because I watched them, Thalvex replied. I saw your father searching for you. I saw your mother waiting at the transport ship, looking for you until the very last moment. They loved you, Wu Jin. They would never have left you by choice. But Wu Jin was too angry and hurt to listen to reason. If they loved me so much, why did they not come back for me? It has been 17 years, father. 17 years, and no one has come looking for me. Perhaps they believe you are dead, Thalvex suggested gently. The solar flares should have killed any living thing left on the surface. They could not have known that you survived. Or perhaps they do not care, Wu Jin said coldly. He stood up and began pacing around the chamber, his emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Everything he had believed about himself, about his life, about his place in the universe had just been turned upside down. I want to know more about them, he said finally. About the humans, about my real parents. Thalvex nodded. The human settlement still stands, mostly intact. Their computer systems may still have information about their people and their culture. Take me there, Wu Jin demanded. I want to see where I came from. The journey to the abandoned New Soul colony was difficult for both of them. For Wu Jin, every step brought new questions and new pain. For Thalvex, it meant watching his beloved son discover a heritage that might take him away forever. The human buildings looked smaller than Wu Jin had imagined. Everything was designed for creatures his size, which felt both familiar and strange. As they explored the empty streets, he began to remember things. Not specific memories, but feelings. The sense that he had been here before. They found the computer center intact, its systems still powered by the colony's nuclear reactor. Thalvex had learned to operate human technology during his years of caring for Wu Jin, and he was able to activate the main computer banks. Here, he said, pointing to a screen filled with human writing, personnel records. You can search for your family name. Wu Jin typed Park into the search system. Immediately, dozens of files appeared on the screen. He found his parents quickly. Park Tae-min, engineer. Kim So-ra, doctor, and there, in their family record, was his own entry. Park Wu Jin, born premature, special medical needs. There were photographs. Images of a man and woman holding a tiny baby, all of them smiling. The baby in the pictures had the same dark eyes that Wu Jin saw in mirrors every day. They look happy, he said quietly, his anger beginning to fade. They were, Thalvex said. I watched them many times before the evacuation. They were very devoted to you. Wu Jin spent hours reading through the colony's records. He learned about human culture, human history, human achievements and failures. He read about Earth, the distant planet where his species had originated. He discovered that humans were known throughout the galaxy for their adaptability, their creativity, and their refusal to give up in the face of impossible odds. This explains so much, he said as he read about human problem-solving methods. The way I think, the way I approach challenges. It is not a defect in my Velthari nature, it is my human nature. You are not defective, Thalvex said firmly. You never were. You are simply different, and that difference has made you stronger. As they prepared to leave the abandoned colony, Wu Jin felt a strange mix of emotions. He was still angry about being abandoned, but he also felt proud to learn about his human heritage. He was sad to discover that he was not truly Velthari, but he was grateful for the father who had raised him with such love and patience. What happens now? He asked. Thalvex as they walked back through the empty streets. Now you must decide who you want to be, his father replied. You are human by birth, but you are also my son. You carry the knowledge of both peoples within you. That makes you unique in the entire galaxy. I want to find them, Wujin said suddenly. My birth parents, if they are still alive. The other? Humans. I want to know what happened to them after they left this place. Thalvex felt a sharp pain in his heart, but he nodded. If that is what you truly want, then I will help you. But I will always be your son too, Wujin added quickly. You raised me, taught me, loved me when no one else could. That will never change. As they returned to their crystal caves, both father and son knew that their lives were about to change. Again. The truth had been revealed, and there was no going back to the simple days when Wujin believed he was just a small, strange Velthari. He was human, and that heritage called to something deep in his soul. 6 years had passed since Wujin learned the truth about his origins. Now 23 years old, he had spent those years building devices that could detect signals from space. Every day he scanned the galaxy for any sign of human activity, hoping to find traces of the people who had fled Kepler-442b. He had grown tall and strong during his years in the caves, taller than most humans would be due to the planet's lower gravity. His skin was tanned from working near the energy crystals, and he wore traditional Velthari ceremonial markings that he had chosen to have permanently etched into his arms as a symbol of respect for the father who raised him. Anything today? Thalvex asked as he entered Wujin's workshop. The great dragon moved more slowly now, his age finally beginning to show. Nothing yet, father, Wujin replied, adjusting the settings on his latest scanning device. But I've expanded the search range. If there are humans within 50 light-years of this system, I will find them. Thalvex watched his adopted son work with pride and sadness mixed together. Wujin had become a master inventor, creating technology that combined human ingenuity with Velthari knowledge in ways that amazed even the ancient dragon. But Thalvex knew that his son's heart was restless. The desire to find his own kind grew stronger each year. Father, Wujin said suddenly, his voice excited, I am detecting something. A large metal object moving toward our system at sublight. Speed, Thalvex moved closer to look at the readings. How large? Very large. The size suggests a major spacecraft, possibly a deep exploration vessel. Wu Jin worked frantically at his controls, trying to get more detailed information. Father, it is broadcasting identification signals, human identification signals. Both of them froze. After all these years of searching and hoping, could it really be happening? Are you certain? Thalvex asked. Yes, Wu Jin whispered. They are coming back. The spacecraft would take 3 days to reach Kepler-442b. During that time, Wujin barely slept or ate. He worked constantly, preparing communication equipment and trying to intercept more signals from the approaching ship. Finally, he managed to break through their communication encryption. Voices began coming through his speakers. Human voices, speaking in languages that sounded familiar but different from what he remembered from the colony computers. This is HSV Resilience approaching Kepler-442b, a male voice said. Beginning orbital survey. All teams prepare for surface analysis. HSV Resilience, this is Commander Cho Minho, another voice responded. Dr. Kim So-ra, your xenoid biology. Team is cleared for preliminary scans. Look for any signs that the planet is recovering from the solar flare damage. Wujin's heart nearly stopped. Kim So-ra, that was his mother's name. But it could not be the same person. It had been 23 years. She would have moved on, started a new life, maybe even had other children to replace the son she lost. But the voice continued. And as Wujin listened, he began to recognize something in the tone, the way certain words were pronounced. Memories. From his earliest years, too vague to be real memories, but too strong to be imagination. Commander, Dr. Kim's voice came through the speakers again. I am reading some unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. There appears to be artificial activity in the mountain regions. Artificial how? Commander Cho asked. I cannot be certain from orbit, but the pattern suggests advanced technology. Possibly energy manipulation on a scale that would require a highly developed civilization. The Velthari, Thalvex said quietly. They have detected my people. This is our chance, Wujin said, moving to his communication equipment. I can contact them directly. Wait, Thalvex warned. Are you prepared for this? Once you make contact, everything will change. You cannot take it back. Wujin paused, his hand hovering over the transmission controls. He had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was here, he felt terrified. What if they rejected him? What if they did not believe who he was? What if they had truly forgotten about the baby they left behind? I have to try, he said. Finally, and activated the transmitter. HSV resilience, he said, speaking in the human language he had learned from the colony computers. This is a ground-based transmission from Kepler 442b. Can you hear me? There was shocked silence from the ship. Then Commander Cho's voice returned, filled with amazement. Ground transmission? This is impossible. There should be no life on that planet. Commander, there is life here, Wujin continued, his heart pounding. My name is Park Wujin. I was born in New Seoul, Colony 23 years ago. I was left behind during the evacuation. Another long silence. Then a different voice came through the speakers, shaky with emotion. Wujin? My baby? Is that really you? It was his mother? Even after all these years, even though her voice was older and sadder than he remembered, Wujin knew it was her. Yes, he whispered, tears running down his face. I am alive, Mother. I survived? The reunion took place 2 days later, when a small shuttlecraft landed near the entrance to Thalvex's cave system. Wujin waited nervously, wearing his best Velthari ceremonial robes and carrying gifts of crystal technology he had created, when the shuttle door opened. A woman stepped out who looked older than the photos in the colony computer, with gray streaks in her black hair and lines around her eyes. But when she saw Wujin, her face lit up with a smile that was exactly the same as he remembered from his deepest, earliest memories. My son, Kim Sora whispered and ran to embrace him. They held each other for a long time, both crying too. Hard to speak. Finally, Wujin pulled back to look at her face. I thought you were dead, she said, touching his cheek as if she could not believe he was real. When we realized you were not on any of the ships, when we went back and found the colony destroyed, we thought we had lost you forever. You came back? Wujin asked in amazement. As soon as it was safe, she replied. Your father and I returned with the first rescue mission 6 months after the evacuation. We searched everywhere, but the radiation had been so intense, and there was so much destruction. We found no trace of you. Where is he? Wujin asked. Where is my father? Sora's face grew sad. He died 5 years ago, my son. He never stopped hoping that somehow you had survived, but the grief of losing you was too much for him. He used to say that if we had just had a few more minutes, if the building had not collapsed at that exact moment, everything would have been different. Wujin felt a deep sadness for the father he would never know, but also gratitude for the father who had raised him. He was a good man then? The best, Sora said. He would have been so proud to see what you have become. Behind them, Thalvex emerged from the cave entrance. The humans from the shuttle stepped back in fear and amazement at the sight of the massive dragon-like creature. Do not be afraid, Wujin said quickly. This is Thalvex, my adoptive father. He saved my life and raised me as his own son. Sora looked up at the great dragon with wonder and gratitude. Thank you, she said in her limited Velthari, words that Wujin had taught her over the communication system. Thank you for saving my child. Thalvex bowed his massive head respectfully. He has been the greatest joy of my long life, he replied in carefully practiced human speech. You created a remarkable being. Commander Cho Minho approached cautiously. Dr. Kim, I hate to interrupt this reunion, but we need to understand what happened here. The energy readings we detected, the advanced technology, the fact that your son survived on a planet that should have been sterile. This changes everything we thought we knew about this system. There is much to explain, Wu Jin agreed. And much I need to know about what has happened to humanity since you left this place. As they talked, more shuttles began landing. Scientists, diplomats, and researchers who wanted to study this impossible situation where a human child had been raised by an alien species and had thrived in ways that challenged everything they understood about interspecies interaction. But for Wu Jin, the most important moment was simply sitting with his mother, learning about the family he had lost and the family he had gained, while his two fathers, birth and adoptive, shared the story of how their worlds had come together to create something entirely new. He was no longer just human or just Velthari. He had become something unique in the galaxy, a bridge between two very different peoples. And as more ships arrived in orbit around Kepler 442b, he began to realize that his story was only just beginning. 3 months had passed since the humans returned to Kepler 442. What began as a simple reunion had grown into something much larger. Ships from both human space and other worlds had arrived to witness the unprecedented relationship between Wu Jin and the Velthari, but the peaceful gathering was about to be interrupted. Wu Jin, Commander Cho Minho said urgently as he entered the newly built meeting hall that connected the human research station with Thalvex's cave system. We have a problem, a big one. Wu Jin looked up from the hybrid technology he was demonstrating to a group of human scientists and Velthari researchers. Over the past months, he had been working to help both species understand each other, sharing knowledge that could benefit everyone. What kind of problem? He asked. Our long-range sensors have detected a large fleet approaching this system, Commander Cho replied. The ships match the design patterns of the Korthani Collective. A chill ran through everyone in the room. The Korthani were known throughout the galaxy as aggressive conquerors who destroyed or enslaved every species they encountered. They were one of the few threats that could unite former enemies in fear. How many ships? Asked Elder Vos Kalen, the ancient Velthari who had become one of Wu Jin's unlikely allies. At least 50, Commander Cho said grimly, including several ship killers that could destroy our largest vessels with a single blast. Thalvex, who had been quietly observing the demonstration, stepped forward. His golden scales seemed to dim with worry. The Korthani have been expanding into this region of space for several years, he said in his deep voice. My people have avoided them by staying hidden. But now, with all these ships in orbit around our world, we have attracted their attention. Can we evacuate? Asked Dr. Sora, since being reunited with her son. She had become the leader of the human research team and had learned to work closely with the Velthari. Not quickly enough, Commander Cho admitted. It would take weeks to evacuate everyone. The Korthani will arrive in 5 days. Then we fight, said Captain Lida Sam, the commander of the human defense fleet. She was a small woman but known throughout human space for her tactical brilliance. With respect, Captain, Elder Vos Kalen replied, neither of our peoples alone has enough firepower to defeat a Korthani battle fleet of that size. But together? Wu Jin asked quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Over the past months, he had become the unofficial ambassador between the two species, the one person who could understand both human and Velthari ways of thinking. What are you suggesting? Thalvex asked his adopted son. I am suggesting that we stop thinking like separate peoples and start thinking like allies, Wu Jin replied. He moved to the large display screen in the center of the room and began calling up technical diagrams. The humans excel at building ships and weapons, he continued. The Velthari excel at energy manipulation and defense. But we have never combined these abilities into a single tactical approach. He showed them designs he had been working on. In secret, hybrid technologies that merged human engineering with Velthari energy control. Human ships protected by Velthari energy shields, he explained. Velthari crystal weapons powered by human fusion reactors. Joint battle formations where human speed and maneuverability complement Velthari power and endurance. Captain Lida Sam studied the diagrams with growing excitement. This could work, she said. But we would need to modify our entire fleet. In less than 5 days. Not just modify, Elder Voskalen added. Our peoples would need to fight together in the same ships, trusting each other completely. The Velthari have never fought alongside another species. Neither have humans, at least not like this, Captain Lee admitted. But I have, Wujin said firmly. I have lived as both human and Velthari. I know how both peoples think, how they solve problems, how they approach combat. I can coordinate the combined fleet. You are not a military commander, Commander Cho pointed out gently. No, Wujin agreed. But I am the only one here who truly understands both species. And if we are going to survive this, we need someone who can think like both a human and a Velthari at the same time. The next 5 days were the most intense of Wujin's life. He worked almost without sleeping, moving between human ships and Velthari strongholds, overseeing the installation of hybrid systems and training mixed crews to work together. The hardest part was not the technology, but getting the two species to trust each other. Humans were nervous about having massive dragon-like creatures aboard their ships. Velthari were uncomfortable with the cramped spaces and rapid pace of human vessels. Remember, Wujin told each mixed crew, you are not human and Velthari. Working together, you are a new kind of warrior, combining the best of both peoples. On the morning the Korthani fleet arrived, the combined defense force was as ready as they could make it in such a short time. 20 human ships, each one carrying Velthari warriors and equipped with hybrid crystal energy weapons. 15 Velthari fighters modified with human engines and targeting systems. Each one piloted by a human Velthari team. Wujin stood on the bridge of the flagship, wearing a uniform that combined human military dress with Velthari ceremonial armor. His mother stood beside him as senior science officer, while Thalvex had taken the position of chief energy weapons coordinator. Korthani fleet is entering weapons range, reported the tactical officer, a young human woman named Park Ji-yoon, who had learned to work with a Velthari partner named Kesvel. All ships, this is Wujin, he said into the communication system, speaking in both human and Velthari languages simultaneously. Remember, we are not fighting as two separate peoples today. We are fighting as one. Human creativity and Velthari power working together. The battle was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Human ships dancing through space with impossible agility, while Velthari energy shields protected them from massive Korthani weapons. Velthari fighters moving in perfect formation, while human tactical computers calculated their optimal attack patterns. But the Korthani were experienced warriors, and they adapted quickly to the unusual fighting style. The battle raged for hours with losses on both sides. We are not winning, Captain Liasam reported grimly. The Korthani have too many ships. Then we need to change our approach, Wujin replied. An idea was forming in his mind, something that would require perfect cooperation between human and Velthari forces. All ships form defensive sphere around the planet, he ordered. Velthari fighters prepare for energy-linking protocol. Wujin, Thalvex said quietly, what you are planning has never been attempted before. I know, Father, Wujin replied. But humans have never worked with Velthari before either, and that has been working out pretty well. The defensive sphere formed with human ships providing the outer layer and Velthari fighters creating an inner energy network. Then, following Wujin's coordination, every Velthari in the fleet began to link their energy manipulation abilities together, channeling power through the crystal systems that Wujin had built into each ship. The result was a massive energy pulse that disabled every Korthani ship in the system at once.